Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 19th Annual Korbel Dinner. Please welcome tonight's Master of Ceremonies, DU alum and 9 News anchor, Taronda Thomas.
Good evening. I am so happy to be here and to be amongst friends and alumni and just to participate in this event. How wonderful does Magness Arena look tonight? This is beautiful. They've done an incredible job. I'm thrilled to be with all of you here tonight on this special occasion. As a DU alum, I am especially proud to be here as we welcome the first sitting vice president to visit this campus in our university's history. This is an exciting time for DU and for all of us who consider this place a second home or an extended part of our family. We have a new, bold chancellor, Rebecca Chop, and an exciting future ahead. We are witnessing the implementation of the DU Impact 2025 strategic plan. This fall, the new Engineering and Computer Science building will open its doors to students and the community. And the Anna and John J.C. International Relations Complex. Yes, definitely a round of applause for that. That is the new Josef Korbel School of International Studies, opened last spring, and it has already generated so much interest in the school and in its work. Let's watch to see what I mean.
More than 50 years ago, the Josef Korbel School of International Studies was founded by a distinguished Czechoslovakian diplomat seeking refuge from totalitarianism in Europe during World War II and the ensuing Cold War.
It's the highest structural steel element.
Josef Korbel was passionate about tackling the world's most pressing problems, first as a European diplomat, and later as an American scholar and professor and the first dean of our school. His legacy has left an indelible imprint on America and on the world. Today, the Josef Korbel School remains focused and deeply involved in addressing urgent issues. Thriving in the heart of Denver, Colorado, the Korbel School is at the epicenter of one of the most livable cities in the nation, young, quickly growing, and as sunny as ever. The city has become an international hub, playing host to a number of public, private, and nonprofit organizations engaged in global affairs. From international security and public policy, to conflict resolution, humanitarian assistance, and human rights, to global economics, our faculty are spearheading research on current world challenges. The Korbel School offers students the opportunity to learn from leading professionals within the international studies field. These faculty have broken new ground with a 23-fold increase in sponsored research awards since 2007. Like our founder, our alumni are leaving their impact across the globe. Condoleezza Rice walked these halls, as did international foreign ministers and our nation's top military officers. And they remain engaged with our school today as visiting professors and guest lecturers. 95% of our graduates have a job or are pursuing higher education within 1 year of graduating. Jobs with organizations such as the U.S. Department of State, United Way, and Save the Children. Our current students promise a bright future for our school. 1/3 of our graduate students are engaged in faculty research, while undergrads gain experience through the Peace Corps, study abroad, and internships in the private sector, government, the United Nations, World Bank, and USAID. We award nearly $5 million in scholarships, plus 10 full-year tuition scholarships to students from around the world, ensuring a diverse student body that learns from each other as much as the faculty. The heart of the school lies within the future it builds, creating opportunities for future generations to leave their mark upon the world and staying true to the ideals of our founder.
With so many wonderful things happening, it is good to be a part of the University of Denver. Now, I don't know if you all know, I'm in the business of news. And U.S. News & World Report just named the University of Denver, again, one of the top schools in the country. So definitely reason to continue to celebrate. To kick off this incredible occasion, it is my distinguished honor to introduce to you our Chancellor, Just 1 year ago, Rebecca Chop stood on this stage in this arena and was inaugurated as the University of Denver's 18th chancellor and the first woman in the role in 152 years. I'd say it's about time. She came to DU in the fall of 2014 after serving as president of the prestigious Swarthmore College and Colgate University. She is a noted scholar in higher education and in religion and has energized the DU community both on campus and across the country. In her short time here at DU, Rebecca Chop has proven herself as a visionary leader and launched the DU Impact 2025 strategic plan. It carves out a bold and innovative future for this institution. Please help me in welcoming our Chancellor, Rebecca Chop.
Thank you, Taronda. Thank you all for joining us tonight as we celebrate the Josef Korbel School of International Studies. For more than half a century, the Korbel School has educated and inspired leaders whose work spans the globe. From a Secretary of the State to foreign ministers in Chile and Iran, from a Chief of Staff in the U.S. Army to the first U.S. Ambassador to the African Union, Korbel graduates are shaping the diplomacy and political environments of our world. The reach of this school is broad, and it is also deep, with programs like the annual Crisis Engagement and Negotiation Exercise. Orchestrated every year by our graduate students, the exercise gives Korbel graduate students the opportunity to develop their knowledge from the classroom, to work together to make time-sensitive decisions in the face of crisis situations. Programs like that one, and many others, have found a new home in the Anna and John J.C. International Relations Complex. This exquisite new building is designed to enhance our students' real-world experiences, equipped with technologies that bring our students into collaboration with experts from around the world. This collaboration, this innovation, this bringing together of the best minds to solve our world's problems, that is how the Korbel School is creating the future of our students' education under the strategic plan, DU Impact 2025. Through that strategic vision, we as a university have embarked upon a journey that will provide our students with the holistic education they need to be ethical, innovative, and inclusive leaders and problem solvers here in Denver, in Colorado, and around the world. And with the inspiration of the Korbel's long-standing partnerships, we are engaging with organizations and communities, developing real partnerships to collaborate and lead for the public good. So as we gather tonight, and I'm so happy you're all here, what a special evening, we come to honor both the past, but also the exciting future that we have together in the Korbel School. Your presence here supports our students. It is support for our students' scholarships, providing boundless opportunities and inspiration for these future leaders of Denver, Colorado, and the globe. Even more than that, this gathering tonight represents an opportunity for the University of Denver to position itself as a thought leader in Colorado and beyond on the most important matters of the day. And needless to say, we are incredibly honored and grateful to have Vice President Joe Biden with us this evening. His lifelong leadership, yes, his lifelong leadership as a senator from Delaware and now as vice president of our nation, is an inspiration to us all. And I am grateful to Ambassador Chris Hill, the dean of our Korbel School, for his visionary leadership at the school and for his role in bringing individuals of such amazing stature to our university. Ambassador Hill is our most senior dean. He joined the University of Denver in 2010. He is a former career diplomat, a four-time ambassador, nominated by 3 presidents, whose last post was ambassador to Iraq. He has served in numerous countries around the world. We are honored to have Ambassador Hill's extraordinary talent and leadership at the helm of the Korbel School. Join me in welcoming Ambassador Chris Hill.
Thank you very much, Chancellor Chop. And let me say what a great pleasure it is to be here. This is our 19th Korbel Dinner. And what we've always done here, of course, is to honor the founder, that is Josef Korbel, who was a remarkable person, a remarkable academic, remarkable diplomat, and also a refugee. He was a Czechoslovak diplomat who had to escape the Nazi invasion in March 1939. And he came back to his country only to have to leave 9 years later when the communists seized power in February 1948. So he came with his family to Denver in 1949. His wife sitting next to him, she was the navigator as they drove from New York to Denver. She kept saying, "Joseph, we need to be going up." A little confused by those wheat fields out there. And they had three kids in the back seat, including a future Secretary of State, Madeleine Korbel Albright. So this is a particularly, I think, important anniversary because, in case you haven't heard, the Korbel School, we've moved into new digs. It is really extraordinary what this Anna and John C. International Relations Complex has meant to our school. We have much needed space for classrooms, study areas, spaces for students to gather. We even have a bigger office for the dean, I must confess. There's so much that has really gone in the right direction, but more important than just being sort of bricks and mortars, what this building is a platform for modern communication. We have students that can sit in one room and talk to students in the Middle East. It is really quite amazing. And of course, we have, for those of you who've seen the building, it's really quite remarkable because it has this kind of unique combination of Chinese details, such as the blue tiles, and then some Italian lines on the, and you might wonder, how did that happen? And all you have to do to understand that is to meet Anna and John C. Anna and John, you have made a tremendous, tremendous contribution. I like to think not only to our school, but to not only to our school, but really to our country's understanding of the world and what we need to do. Like Josef Korbel, John and Anna came from other countries. John from China, of course, Anna from Italy. But they speak English together, although I've heard John do a pretty good Italian accent from time to time. But they've made their home in Denver, and I think everyone in Denver really has felt their presence really across this great city of ours. And I think what's really great about this, just talking to the mayor who has worked so hard to make Denver a global city, and as I like to say to the mayor, if you're going to be a global city, you better have a global school, and we got that checked. So I think we are in good shape with this global school, and we're going to be doing a lot more because we are not done yet. Tonight we're going to be honoring three individuals who represent the very best of our community and the ideals for which our school stands. Carrie and John Morgridge, who established the Morgridge Family Foundation. They're going to be receiving the Josef Korbel Humanitarian Award for their long-standing philanthropy and for things they have done for global education, health and wellness, and poverty and the arts. We're so grateful for their commitment. We're so honored to be able to honor them here. And we're also going to be honoring the Chairman and CEO of DaVita, Kent Thiry. Kent is he's a remarkable leader, and I think anyone who's seen what DaVita has done, you see his personality in his company. It is extraordinary, and he will receive the university's International Bridge Builder Award for all the achievements he's had in building ties between Colorado and the international community. So thank you very much, Kent. And tonight we're going to be honoring we are very honored really to have as our special, very special guest speaker, a public servant who has represented our country in just about every region of the world. He's served our country in various positions for 44 years. I've had the honor to know him for almost 20 years, back in my time in the Balkans, when he'd come out and see how the embassies were doing out there. But also more recently in Iraq. You know, back in the spring, I wanted to invite him, so I sent him a letter and I said, sir, just a few years ago, you asked me to go to Baghdad, and I'm now going to ask you to come to Denver. I think I still have some credit on that transaction. So, This is a seminal figure in our country. He's played a pivotal role in shaping U.S. foreign policy on issues related to terrorism, WMD, that is weapons of mass destruction, also in the post-Cold War Europe. He's been involved so much in Southwest Asia and, of course, in the Middle East. He's been deeply involved in shaping our policy in Iraq. I will never forget sitting with him in the Chevy Suburban just at our embassy in Iraq, and a 107 millimeter rocket went overhead and landed harmlessly some 200 feet away. Actually, I'm exaggerating. It was about 175 feet away that it landed, but he didn't flinch. We just continued the conversation. Just truly a remarkable person who has done so much for this country that we all love. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to tell you, you are going to have really a fabulous time with this very special guest speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Please be seated. Unless you're so cold for sitting on the ice, it's too cold to sit in your seats. I tell you what, you want to get a guy to speed up his speech, stick everybody on the ice. I don't know. Thank you all for being so gracious. It's an honor to be here. And Chris and I, the dean and I, have been friends for a long time. And you know, I've been doing this job a long time, chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee for years, involved in that endeavor since I was a 32-year-old senator. I got there when I was 29. And there's certain people that I look to over my career and say I actually learned a lot from them. Chris is one of those guys. The ambassador is one of those guys. Some of you may know, if you follow foreign policy, I had a deep, abiding interest in the Balkans. I'm that guy who pushed for lifting the arms embargo. I'm the guy that had that face-to-face confrontation with Slobodan Milosevic when he asked me what did I think of him. He spoke perfect English. I said, I think you're a war criminal. I'm going to spend the rest of my days trying to see you tried as one. Made me very popular. No. But Chris was there. Chris was in the Balkans and played a major role with Ambassador Holbrooke. I watched him. I watched his ability to exercise his judgment and diplomacy. And I mean that sincerely. It matters. All foreign policy is, in my humble opinion, for those of you who are foreign policy experts, I hope you're not offended, is all it is a logical extension of personal relationships with a lot less information to go on. I'm not being facetious. I'm being deadly earnest. Deadly earnest. I'm known for having said that all politics, Tip O'Neill made the phrase, all politics is local, a phrase used by everyone in public life. But the president kids me, and now I'm being quoted as having said, now I'm old enough to try to improve on Tip. He was a great friend. All politics is personal. It matters. You have to figure out, you don't have to like, you have to figure out what the other person's interest is. You got to figure out what their latitude is. You got to figure out what their intentions are. And Chris has done that more than, better than most people that I've worked with. In Iraq, he not only knew the players, and it's a disparate group, a very disparate group, but he had relationships with all of them. They would occasionally call him to ask him to intervene with another local Iraqi leader, Sunni or Shia or Kurd. And so he's been a great gift to this country, and I mean that sincerely. I think one of the best bargains the American public gets are some of the incredible Foreign Service officers and ambassadors and diplomats that we have. Speaking of incredible people, and by the way, he deserves. I have a very good friend here tonight. I don't know whether to call him ambassador or senator or governor, whatever the hell he wants to be, but Ken Salazar. Ken, how are you? Great, great friend. And Taronda, I was saying how impressive you were as I watched on the big screen back there. I don't know where you are. And the dean looked at me and said, of course, she's a graduate here. So I guess everything's good that graduates from here. Chancellor, thank you for the opportunity. You have made this already great university better and better. And John Morgridge, and your family foundation, the receipt of the Josef Korbel School of Humanitarian Award is, I'm told, is well deserved. I really don't know you, but I've heard great things about you and your foundation. And Kent Thiry, Chairman and CEO of a really first-rate health partnership. I'm told you do an awful lot for this university, and the award, the University International Bridge Builders Award. Again, I don't know you personally, but congratulations. And as I used to say in the Senate, where I spent a long time, if you excuse a point of personal privilege, I say to all the students in the watch party, wherever you are out there, if you hang around, I'd love to come and see you after the speech. It's a real honor to be here to honor the legacy of a man who I didn't know, but I know his daughter very, very, very well for a long time. A man who believes so deeply in the potential power of American leadership. That was sort of the gravamen of his notion of what international order is all about. He had an unfaltering faith in the capacity of America to do good in the world. And he knew better than anyone that America was and remains, as his daughter, my friend and Chris's friend, Madeleine Albright, always used to say, the indispensable nation. That's not hyperbole. I think that is historical fact and presently still the case. The ambassador understood the need for great educational institutions like the University of Denver to continue to refresh and renew our commitment to these principles, especially now. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm an internationalist. Ambassador Hill is. We firmly believe in the overwhelming national interest of the United States remains that we remain deeply engaged in the world. You know, half of success is showing up. But for the first time, there's a broad consensus that exists, the one that existed for 7 decades, the broad consensus to a liberal international order and international engagement is now in question. Questioned by a significant minority in both political parties, particularly the Republican Party, but in both parties. In my view, it's a real minority, but in my view, this is dangerous. For we're at an inflection point in world history. Not because of Barack Obama and Joe Biden or any other world leader, but because the world is changing so rapidly and drastically. I had a physics professor who once defined an inflection point as you're riding down the highway with both hands on the steering wheel at 60 miles an hour, and you abruptly turn 7, 10 degrees in one direction or another. You can never get back on the path you're on before. Ken and my colleagues in the Senate used to always kid me because I'm always quoting Irish poets. They think I do it because I'm Irish. That's not the reason. They're simply the best poets in the world. But there's a great line from William Butler Yeats's poem, Easter Sunday, 1916. The 100th anniversary was, I was in Ireland and was celebrated just 2 months ago. And he was trying to describe his Ireland after the First Rising. But the line he used better describes the world we're in today, in my view, than it did his Ireland in 1960. He said, and I mean this sincerely, he said, all's changed utterly. A terrible beauty has been born. In the last 15 years, all has changed in the world. Again, not because of any particular world leader. The massive tides of history are moving. I got in trouble for predicting that before we left office, the Middle East would be fundamentally erupting, not because of the Israelis and the Palestinians, but because the tides of history, authoritarian regimes, they cannot be sustained. Tom Friedman said it best, there is no nation from Tunisia to the Persian Gulf except 2. The rest are tribes with flags in the aftermath of the arbitrary lines drawn in World War I and World War II. Folks, everything we face is different than it was 15 years ago. I'm a product as a 29-year-old kid of the Cold War as a senator with all the old Cold War warriors that I ended up working with. We don't have 18,000 ICBMs new nuclear warheads aimed at us now. We have different threats. In a sense, less consequential, but more difficult to accommodate and deal with. The fear of the spread of weapons of mass destruction to non-state actors that respond to no constituency. Fundamental shift in energy resources in the world. In the last 10 years, think of the change. North America, Canada, the United States, and Mexico is now the epicenter of energy in the world. Not the Saudi Arabian Peninsula, not the Middle East, not Nigeria, North America. Fundamentally altering the landscape. Digitalization and globalization has had a profound impact on attitudes around the world, producing great winners and extraordinary losers. We can neither protect nor advance our interest by turning inward. The day the President and I were sworn in, before that day, we discussed in that interregnum period, putting together our cabinet, that the single most important job we had was to, as quickly as we could, restore respect for American leadership around the world. Think back to 2008. It's not a criticism of anybody, it's just a fact. American relationships around the world, even with our closest allies, were badly frayed. Our judgment, as well as our motives, were being called into question by friends and foes alike. According to the Gallup poll back then, the United States was ranked behind Germany, the European Union, China, only slightly ahead of Russia in terms of the most respected countries. Now we rank #1 as the most respected country in the world again. That data backs up what I see every time I travel abroad. Not because I'm important, just because the nature of my job is the last 3 decades. I've literally met every major world leader. Again, not because I'm important, just the nature of my job. Many of the world leaders I know now, they were legislators in their institutions when I knew them. I don't know one, not a one, who would not trade places in a heartbeat with the United States of America, friend and foe. American leadership is more respected and admired today than we take office, no matter what the critics try to make you believe. Just look at the numbers. As I said, I've traveled more than 1,300,000 miles since becoming Vice President. Good thing the President said, if you want to be Secretary of State, tell me now. My wife said, it'd be better for the family if you're Vice President because you won't travel as much. Whoa. But look, there's a lot of problems, man. As I said, the world is changing. It always takes governments, any government, time to catch up with fundamental change. We talked about the information age. It had already come and passed before government started to react to it. No, I'm not joking. It's not a criticism, it's an observation. But nations today, with all our troubles, are more willing to line up beside us and take on multiple global challenges that lie before us and the opportunities that are available to us. You see in the historic Paris Agreement that the President negotiated on climate change, the 66-nation coalition to counter ISIL, the summit President Obama and I will be chairing next week at the United Nations. He's passing it off to me because he's passing it off to me at some point. It's a long time. There's a lot of heads of state that want to talk. That wasn't said very well, was it? But what the president's pulled together at the United Nations is a summit to address the refugee crisis and stabilize migration flows, which are destabilizing much of Europe. The steps we've taken through the Nuclear Security Summit to counter global proliferation, and so much more. Our ability to lead the world and rally nations to our side rests upon, and this is the point I want to make, particularly the students, on 2 basic pillars. One, the strength of our economy. Ladies and gentlemen, after that god-awful recession, we reestablished our standing as the strongest, most innovative major economy in the world, the largest economy in the world. We led the global recovery. We rescued the financial system, stabilizing the economy. And I think it's important to add, when we did TARP and bailed out the banks, which was like petting snakes, I mean, the hardest vote any member of Congress ever had to make. I'm not joking. But we attached to it interest rates to pay back. The public made billions of dollars, and it all got paid back. But God, it was unpopular. We turned Wall Street back to the greatest allocator of capital in the history of the world from a casino, preventing another crash, protecting consumers. We invested more than $1 trillion in our economy in 30-word stimulus. And America emerged from a global recession faster and stronger than any nation, in large part because of the policies that a very resilient public allowed us to initiate. Our economy has grown 20 times faster than Europe's, 100 times faster than Japan. Just this week, notwithstanding all the bad-mouthing, the Census Department showed the typical household income was up $2,800 just last year, the fastest growth on record. 3.5 million people moved out of poverty, not into poverty. So it's no exaggeration. And by the way, this isn't about Barack and me. It's about the grit of the American people. So it's no exaggeration to say that our economy today is not just recovering, it is on the cusp of resurgence, if we just get out of our own way and do a couple smart things. The second pillar, beyond a strong economy, to be able to sustain our leadership in the world, is that we had to reestablish our credibility, not merely by leading by the example of our power, but by the power of our example. Why does the rest of the world repair to us? Clearly, we are the strongest military in the history of the world. That is not hyperbole. That is not hyperbole. This is the finest, best trained military in the history of the world. But that's not why people respect us and race to come here. It's because of our value system, matching our policy to what we say we value. Hillary and I talked about it when she was Secretary of State. We'd meet every Tuesday morning at my house for an hour. I was kiddingly referred to as the Obama whisperer. What did he mean when he said that to me? Because I'm the only one that knew everybody in the cabinet. I mean, I'm not being facetious, just because I've been around a long time. And everybody from the Department of Interior to Secretary of State knew, as my brother-in-law would say, I was not trying to cut their grass. I wasn't looking for any line authority. So I was able to work between groups, between the agencies. And we talk about it. The fact of the matter is, we really mean what we say, and people think we mean what we say, and we say, we hold these truths self-evident, that all men are created equal. Sounds corny. Endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. That's what we are thought of. That is that shining city on the hill. We've never been able to match it, but we have come a hell of a lot closer. One of the reasons we lost so much respect ranges from Guantanamo, which is a magnet generating more terrorists, to torture, which we have outlawed under any and every circumstance in the United States of America, period. There's no justification. And by the way, as John McCain will tell you, it doesn't work. We began to stand up for the universal rights of all people, for women, for religious minorities, for the LGBT individuals, at home and abroad. Part of our foreign policy, and our aid is dictated in part by the behavior of countries in terms of how they treat women and girls. It matters. The rest of the world recognizes it. There's not a country I go to, without exaggeration, that I don't get, because it's the thing I've worked on so much, thanks for the Violence Against Women Act. No, it's not about me, but I'm serious. People notice what we do. So we insisted that Americans' leadership doesn't always have to be viewed synonymous with the use of force. Even though we have the best, strongest military in the world, but it cannot be one-size-fits-all response to every crisis. And we recognize the most effective leadership often stems from one of our many other strengths: our diplomatic skills, our trade, our economic clout, our generous and effective aid programs. In short, we rebuilt our economy with the help of an awful lot of people and restored our reputation. And these two steps, these two pillars, enabled us to remain committed to a liberal international order designed to strengthen democracy, preserve peace, and lift up lives of people on every continent. It's my strong belief that the next administration should build on this momentum. The next president should depend on and deepen U.S. engagement with the most dynamic region in the world, the Pacific. Over 60% of the GDP, 40% just dealing with TPP, starting right here in the Western Hemisphere. That's why we have shifted our focus and 40% of our military resources to the Pacific Basin. Because the way the President and I have prioritized improving relations with our neighbors is beginning to change in the hemisphere. We have never been in better shape in this hemisphere, with all the problems that still remain. For the first time in history, it's possible to reasonably picture a hemisphere from northern Canada to the tip of Argentina that is democratic, middle class, and free. There are notable anomalies, from Venezuela to still Cuba to what's going on right now in parts of Brazil. But democratic transition is actually taking place in Brazil within their constitution. We're pushing very hard, all of our Latin American friends, to insist that the transition in Venezuela be constitutional, because the Constitution calls for the ability to hold a referenda. You know why we're able to do that? All these nations now deal with us, and the President asked me to do the hemisphere. I'm the point person. John Kerry is enough doing around the world. You know why they now talk with us? It's because we eliminated the Cold War relic of not recognizing in any way Cuba. They don't like Cuba that much. But it made it impossible for them to be able to work with us on other human rights issues as long as we had that policy. Now, things have changed. It's no longer what we can do for the region. It's what we can do with the region, with them. The table is set to deepen cooperation, as I said, from Canada to Mexico, to capitalize on renewed ties with Argentina, sustain unprecedented engagement in Central America. We've got a long way to go, but imagine if the plan the President asked me to put together actually works. Investing in the Northern Triangle. If you actually have stability in Central America, the phenomenal impact that will have on the hemisphere. We're expanding our partnerships with regional leaders. Chile, Colombia, Brazil. We've also, as I said, recharged our engagement with Asia. The next administration will inherit treaty alliances that are stronger and deeper with Australia, Japan, the Philippines, South Korea. The strongest they've ever been. We've seized historic opportunities in support of democratic transition in Burma, deepening ties in Vietnam, and having the hope and possibility, no certainty, of a relationship with China that's based on competition that plays by basic international rules. Not at all sure their actions in the South China Sea and other areas are going to be able to sustain that relationship. But there's no inherent reason why, if we're smart, because our interests are not dissimilar in the region, particularly North Korea. We've expanded our strategic partnership with India, including mill-to-mill relations now in the Indian Ocean. We've worked with ASEAN to advance rule-based order, creating shared rules and norms of international behavior to address competition in areas like maritime and cyber. Long way to go. And it's imperative the United States continues to take the lead in shaping the international rules of the world in the 21st century. Because if we do not, we will leave a gigantic vacuum. We have to be good as our grandfathers were after World War II. They set an entire new international regime in place. As I said, the world has changed utterly. We have to move so no nation has an unfair advantage and everyone has a chance to compete and succeed. The next administration should continue the practice of aggressively enforcing our trade agreements to ensure that U.S. corporations and workers get a fair shot on the global stage, whether it's trade, maritime security, South China Sea, nuclear nonproliferation, Northeast Asia. The United States has to lead in writing the rules of the road in this vital region. As I said, otherwise there's a vacuum, and our competitors will fill it. The mere sheer weight of China will alter behavior in a significant way. In nearly every part of the world, the United States contends with regional powers that have the enormous capacity to contribute to the international order or to undermine that international order. China, Russia, and Iran. We have to find the right balance to manage these relationships, working together where our interests overlap while maintaining strategic stability, but insisting if they wish to be part of the international order, they have to abide by the international rules of the road. And as we do so, we're going to need to keep shoring up traditional pillars of liberal international order. Organizations like NATO, the European Union, ASEAN. It's a big agenda. But folks, I think sometimes those of us, and many of you sitting on the ice out there, who focus on international relations and foreign policy, we lose sight of the need for a broad consensus among the American people for the international order to be maintained. No policy can be sustained without the informed consent of the American people. No policy can be sustained, no matter how enlightened, without the informed consent of the American people. So as we recommit to advancing an internationalist foreign policy for the 21st century, we have to confront the challenges that have arisen as a consequence as a result of this more interconnected and open world. Folks, a lot of people are hurting. It's not all good. First, we have to recognize that there's real anxiety in America and other countries, but I'll speak to America. Real anxiety rooted in security concerns as a consequence of the threat of terrorism. That danger is real, but it's stoked by those who exaggerate the threat and exacerbate people's fears for their own political well-being. Folks, I've been criticized for saying, but I'll say it again. The American people are so much stronger, so much more resilient, so much more capable than the political leadership gives them credit for. Boston, what did we do? We responded. Boston strong. We own the finish line. The people responded to every single crisis we have faced. What has happened? The people of that region have sucked it up, gotten stronger, not abandoned what they know the purpose of terror is: to change our system, to change our way of life. President Obama has never hesitated to use force to defend American people when necessary. All you got to do is ask Osama bin Laden, al-Qaeda's top operatives in Afghanistan and Pakistan, or the leaders of al-Qaeda affiliates in Yemen or Somalia. More than 120 ISIL top leaders and commanders have been taken off the field over the past 2 years. In Iraq and Syria, ISIL has lost 50% of the territory it once held 3 years ago in Iraq, 20% of the territory in Syria, and it's going to be over in terms of anything remotely approaching a caliphate. But it's going to take time. We have to put this in perspective. We've taken thousands of foreign fighters off the battlefield. The foreign flow has down 50%. They've lost tens of millions of dollars in revenue. I used to always hate it when, in the Vietnam War, is the reason I ran for the United States Senate against that war. When they give us body counts, we kill so many more than they killed. That's not the purpose of my saying this. There is no caliphate. There is no possibility of a caliphate. And the results? We're winning, they're losing, but it's going to take more time. And we should put the threat in perspective. Around the world, terrorism must and will be defeated. Throughout our administration, we've kept a laser focus on Homeland Security. And to the credit of previous administration, we have the most layered defense of any nation in the world. We have spent hundreds of billions of dollars. And now, after not listening to us for so long, our European friends are finally beginning to talk about the need to share intelligence, increased enforcement, better training, passenger lists, a whole range of things. And there's much more coordination now than there has ever been between us and Europe. It's been slow. Will there be another attack in the United States like Boston or we saw in California? If you had to bet, probably sometime there would be. We're a nation of 320 million people. The American people know in their gut there is no existential threat to the security of the United States of America. The point I'm trying to make is, what's happened here is technology has changed dramatically. So now the very things that are available to you on your iPhone is able to be used by terrorists to coordinate Cybersecurity is a real and mounting concern. You don't need an army to generate an expertise. They're real concerns. But what caused the hyperventilation in the country is that phone you have. The daily images of violence shared instantaneously all around the world. Images you would have never seen 10 or 12 years ago. I've actually had people, as I go around the country, say, look at the television and see the migration flows going through the Balkans. Seen barbed wire fences knocked down and saying, they're coming. This has fostered a feeling of lack of control, that we're being overrun by outside forces. It's a basic human reaction, but unfortunately flamed by demagogues, fanned by populist and xenophobic rhetoric, scapegoating immigrants and Muslims. We see it in Europe. I was in Ireland when Brexit vote took place. And maybe the only vote to ever bring together North and South. Not a joke. Because what happens now is, the Republic is still part of the Union and all the benefits that flow from it, and Northern Ireland is not. They've got to work out a modus vivendi on their border now. The impulse to hunker down, shut the gates, build walls, withdraw, rather than lead boldly is real. The second thing we have to address is the economic anxiety brought on by globalization. The increasingly rapid movement of people, money, goods, ideas around the world. You know, because I'm an internationalist, everybody thinks I'm an unabashed supporter and believer that globalization has been a good thing. It has not been a good thing across the board. There's empirical fact that globalization has raised the standard of living for millions upon millions of people the world over. At the same time, it's also clear that globalization hasn't been an unalloyed good. There's a much darker side, punctuated by pressures that stoke fears and anxiety, rising inequity, competition from trade from low-wage countries, low wages, lost jobs, whole industries dismantled. It's created dissatisfaction, a sense of economic displacement. That's real. It's not made up, it's real. In many parts of America, it's real, it's happened. For a lot of people in this country and across the developed world, life feels harder than it used to be. And in communities that have been hardest hit by the downsides of globalization, the decline was underway. It isn't a new phenomenon, it's been going on for decades, but now it is being exacerbated. The fact is, improvements in technology have increased productivity, which means we can make more with fewer workers. So while we're more than doubled our manufacturing output since 1975, we've lost 5 million manufacturing jobs. With the growing demand for high-skilled workers over blue-collar workers, coupled with the competition from low-wage countries, we've seen sharp divergence in wages. We've seen labor protections in the United States deteriorate. Fewer benefits, minimum wage that buys less. These challenges of globalization are exacerbated by the long-run decline of unionization, which means even sharper erosion of worker pay and protections. A recent study was put out by an economic institution pointing out that $2,700, that's how much the average non-union worker has lost in salary due to the reduction in the number of union members in America. All this translates into less economic security for folks who are just trying to feed their families, send their kids to school. And that's a scary thing for a lot of people. And I'm not just talking about poor folks. I'm talking about families where the husband and wife both work, they're making $100,000 a year. They live in Denver, they got 3 kids, and it's not easy. We don't speak to them anymore. either party. We don't speak to those folks making between $60,000 and $110,000. An awful lot of people from the kinds of places where I grew up feel like the basic American bargain has been broken. There was a bipartisan ideal that existed since the late 30s, early 40s. It was a basic bargain. Both parties supported it. If you contributed to the profitability or productivity of the enterprise with whom you worked, you got to share in the benefits. If you worked hard and got ahead, played by the rules, you'd be okay. My dad was one of those guys in the 50s that had to leave Scranton. There was no good work. He left us with our grandparents. I remember coming up, he made the longest, I think the longest walk any parent can make up the short flight of stairs to tell their kids, honey, we can't live in the house anymore. You can't go back to St. Paul's. You can't play in that Little League team. Daddy doesn't have a job. We can't keep the house. I remember him sitting at the edge of the bed when I was going to 4th grade. He's enjoying it and moved down to Wilmington. There's good jobs down there. Uncle Frank is. And honey, when I get a good job, I'm going to come home and get you, Mom, and your brother and sister. And everything's going to be okay. He looked at me and he really believed. He knew everything would be okay because it was his basic bargain. But look what's happened as a consequence of the Great Recession. An awful lot of those middle-class people lost their retirement savings and their home in the recession, and they never missed a mortgage payment. Two cockamamie mortgages, Brown's turning lawn next door, the lawn's turning brown next door to them, never missed a mortgage payment, and they're underwater. So as the markets come back, we've generated $31 trillion in wealth since we went down. There's no cabal. It's not rich folks trying to hurt poor folks. The market went from 6,000 to 18,000. They're not in the market anymore. Housing prices came back. They don't own a house. And globalization exacerbates that in their minds. They don't see a path to prosperity for the kids. They feel left behind. And I know some of you are thinking, I thought Biden came here for a dinner at a school of international affairs. Why in the hell is he talking so much about these domestic issues? But in a globalized world, there is no bright line between foreign and domestic policy. What happens at home impacts on our capacity to have the support of the population to remain engaged in the world. As I said before, you need the informed consent of the governed. To push back against the force of isolationism, you have to first acknowledge that many of the fears and insecurities driving people the other way, they're real. This is a key challenge for the students in the other room that are earning their degrees from the Korbel School today. You're going to have to grapple with it throughout your careers. How to build and sustain a consensus for internationalist foreign policy while managing the disruptions and legitimate dislocations that actually do stem from globalization. It sure in hell isn't to not engage in trade. It sure in hell isn't to reject globalization. It sure in hell isn't to walk away from an international rule-based order. But we have to respond, or it won't matter. As I said, the most informed, enlightened foreign policy cannot be sustained without the informed consent of the American people. So we know how to make up for these dislocations. Increase access to affordable education and job training. Free community college apprenticeships, on-the-job training. Folks, does anybody here think 12 years is enough anymore? I mean, does anybody think that's true in the 21st century? We've moved from brawn to cognitive capability. And guess what? The guy who used to stoke the blast furnace by shoveling coal in has the intellectual capacity to learn photovoltaic technology, to manufacture solar panels. I dread State of the Unions because in every State of the Union, the president always surprises me and turns and says, Joe will do it, something. You may remember a couple years ago said Joe is going to do a study on what the jobs of the future will be and report back to the nation. Well, we met with over 350 of the Fortune 500 CEOs, unions, universities, think tanks. 6 out of 10 jobs of the future are going to require by 2020, now actually, require more than a high school education. But not all require a doctorate or a 4-year degree or even a 2-year degree. We need 1,200,000 IT workers by 2020. We need 500,000 right now. And yet, fewer than 5% of the schools in America allow coding to count as a science in your school. Think about that. There's an outfit called IT Global. Some of you may know it well. When you want an IT worker, you look for them for placement. Detroit was on the balls of its heels, actually bankrupt. One of the things that happened was there was a great excess of a middle-class bureaucracy that actually turned the water on, made the street lights go on and off, handled the tax department, ran the city. And so as Detroit was coming out of bankruptcy, they realized they needed 1,000 IT workers right away. So Global IT came in, and I think it was a 15-week program. And they went into the hood. Black neighborhoods. The first class of, I think it was 54, don't hold me to that. People they happened to be all women. It was more coincidence than intention. Ages 24 to 54. No one with more than a high school degree, a third to a half with GDs. After 14 weeks of learning how to code, every single woman had a job. Lowest paying job starting $54,000, the highest paying $102,000. By the way, it's not rocket science. We need 565,000 registered nurses now. Average salary, $65,000 a year. And you do not need a 4-year degree. We need 47,000 skilled welders now. Average starting salary, $38,000 a year. I could go on down the list. This is within our wheelhouse. That's why we took $8 billion a year tax dollars, went to community colleges and partners with business like you do in this community college here, not this college, in the community college here in Denver, and said, what do you need? They said, we need this skill. I said, come into the community college, bring your people in, tell us what the curricula should be. We'll train them. We have to guarantee protection of workers again, adequate overtime. Any of you women or men in business who decide to reclassify someone so you don't have to pay overtime, shame on you. We've just changed the regulation. You can't do that no more. But by the way, it matters. It matters to people. Paid leave. It's in the national interest. It's in the interest of productivity within your own corporation. Sufficient minimum wage, workplace protections, a voice found in unionization and collective bargaining. Because the squeeze on workers is rooted in a labor market that doesn't always give workers a fair shot. And folks, one of the things that has puzzled me is there used to be an overwhelming consensus on the need to modernize our infrastructure, led by my Republican colleagues when I was in the Senate. We now rank 27th in the world in transportation infrastructure. 27th. People need to be able to reliably able to afford to get to their jobs. We need, and by the way, it presents a virtuous cycle. These are good paying jobs. When they get paid, they go out and they go to the movie theater, get their hair cut more often, buy a new car, go to the restaurant. It infuses. And guess what? You're not hearing about outsourcing now. It's insourcing. 54% of the companies invested in China, asked by Cambridge Research what their intentions are this year. They do this survey every year. 54% said they plan on coming home. I spoke to A.T. Kearney last night. It's the Smithsonian. They put out a report every year. They asked the 300 largest industrialists in the world, where is the best place in the world to invest? By a margin larger than any time in history. I think it's 19 years they've been doing it. The rest of the world says the United States of America. We need a resilient energy network. It cost us $102 billion a year shut down the networks. Superstorms. You're in the middle of the country, but most of the population lives on the coast. Most of the energy plants are at sea level. They flood. They go out. To modernize that infrastructure, we have tens of thousands of miles of gas pipelines, most of which were laid in the 50s, that for safety reasons alone have to be replaced or repaired. I took a bunch of my Republican colleagues and friends, because they wanted them to see it, down to Panama to see the eighth wonder of the world, the two new locks. They're astounding. They accommodate ships that are wider and longer, carry twice as much freight at 40% the cost. Yet we only have 3 ports from Houston to Maine that can accommodate them. What are we doing? American competitiveness depends critically upon infrastructure. You businessmen, when you decided to put a plant, even a service industry, in anywhere here in Denver or in the suburbs, what'd you ask? Where's the nearest access to Interstate Highway? Is there a railhead? What's the water supply like? What is reliability of the energy source? What type of energy is available? In addition to, what kind of tax break can you give me? We don't modernize infrastructure, we're going to be talking about outsourcing again. We need a progressive, efficient tax code that eliminates wasteful tax expenditures and grows the economy. This is not Joe Biden, the liberal Democrat, talking. When Ronald Reagan was president, there were close to $800 billion worth of tax expenditures per year. And what's the rationale for tax expenditure? It promotes what society thinks is a social good, or it rewards risk, because you want people to take risk for productivity and change, or it generates additional productivity. You know how many tax expenditures are in the code today per year? $1.2 trillion. I challenge any of you to justify for me, on the basis of the rationale for tax expenditure, more than $600 to $700 billion of that. But guess what? People say we can't afford 2 years of community college free. Only to colleges where the credits are transferable, where they can show they are able to place people in jobs, and where the student has a B average to get in and maintains it. But you know, that will increase if we're free to 9 million, the number of people in community colleges. But it costs $6 billion a year, $60 billion over 10. How in God's name can we afford that? Our opposition says we're all about productivity and growth. Every study shows if you go to 9 million people free community college, you increase the GDP by 0.2%. Over a decade, that's trillions of dollars. So I got an easy solution. I hope you all know what stepped-up basis is. I never did, but I hope you know. You buy $1 million worth of stock, goes to $2 million, you pay, you're on your way to sell it. You pay capital gains, which is less than your normal tax, on $1 million. But if on the way you drop dead and you leave it to your child and they sell it the next day, they pay nothing. They're good people. I mean it sincerely. The wealthy are as patriotic as the poor. It affects 0.3%. There's not one sliver of evidence suggests it increases productivity. Not one. So I can pay for all the free community college and reduce the deficit by $11 billion because the cost to Treasury, $17 billion a year, that one little tax expenditure. Folks, we know how to do a lot of this. And so I guess the generic point I want to make, and I'll get out of your hair before your chairs completely freeze, is that it's important that we understand that without a growing, dynamic economy, our ability to be that change agent in the world for our own safety's sake diminishes exponentially. We can't possibly sustain the military we have. We spend more than the next 8 nations in the world combined on our military. The next administration has an incredible opportunity to build. And the students who are at this great institution have to understand that in order to sustain what we know we need, a refinement of the global economic system and continued full-bore engagement of the United States in the world affairs, we can't do it unless the people at home think they benefit from it and they're safer because of it. So we need leaders like you're educating here who can make the intellectual case with rigor and conviction that the benefits of global engagement far outweigh the cost. We know how to do that. We also have to have a gut understanding of the real pain, anxiety, and fear, some of it legitimate on the part of the American people. We have to use our domestic policy to bend all this change, to bend the arc of globalization, to benefit average people. Every major fundamental change in world history, every major industrial revolution, we've been ultimately able to bend so there's universal benefit as a consequence of it. Let me say to the students in closing, I said before that we're at an inflection point. If you're ever going to be involved in government or policy, the most propitious time to do it is at moments of great change, because you have your hands on the wheel. With a lot of luck, some discipline, and a little bit of courage, we can bend the arc of history just a little bit. Just a little bit. And we can set a course for the world for the next generation or more, just as our fathers and grandfathers did for us and grandmothers after World War II. It's in our power to do it. I thank you all for listening. Thank you for what you do. And may God bless you and may God protect our troops. Thank you very much.
We're going to resume in about 10 minutes, so please enjoy your dessert and coffee. We'll restart the program in about 10 minutes.
ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the stage your Master of Ceremonies this evening, Taronda Thomas.
Thank you. We so appreciate you all sticking around for what is really, arguably, the most important part of tonight's program, honoring the people who have done so much to make a difference in this world through the Korbel School. Does anybody notice anything different about the stage here? Podium, that's right. The vice president wouldn't let me keep his podium. Go figure. I think I could have pulled it off. But you know what he did do? That was something so neat and special. While you all were mixing and mingling and having your dessert, he went over to Hamilton Gymnasium and went and met all of the students who were watching on closed circuit television. Isn't that incredible? And they were so engaged, and the vice president was just so into it that he took questions from them. They had a great conversation. So only at the University of Denver, right? That was just incredible. So we so appreciate you being here to celebrate with us tonight. I hope you enjoyed your dessert. I hope that coffee warmed you up a little bit since we're out here, like the vice president kept mentioning, on the ice. I'd like to welcome back to the stage Chancellor Rebecca Chopp and Dean Chris Hill.
Each year at the Korbel Dinner, we have the honor to present the university's International Bridge Builders Award for achievements in building ties between Colorado and the international community.
So I think one thing that's clear with anyone who spends about 30 seconds with KT is he has a pretty relentless curiosity and a relentless sense of energy.
You know, the University of Denver Bridge Builders has its center of connecting people, where if you pull one thread here, you know that you're lifting other people up. If you pull a thread here, you're lifting these people up. And that sort of connectivity is what Kent is an expert at. It's what comes natural.
He insisted that I come to a couple of DaVita events and that I really experience the culture there and see the theatrics and the excitement that was created and the focus on citizenship. And that, you know, they compensate employees if they're actually doing more for their community, they get recognized, they get rewarded. And I saw this firsthand and the impact of that on the culture, how everyone who worked for DaVita really looked at what they were doing as improving the world.
I met Kent several years ago. When I came to Congress, I was very concerned about health care, and he's been my friend ever since. He's a wonderful human being, gifted, smart, he knows how to build bridges.
We believe very strongly that if you believe in a community, you must necessarily believe in all community. But the more you do for your people, the more you do for your environment, probably the more successful you'll be as a business person as well. So we very much encourage the teammates of DaVita, the citizens of the DaVita Village, to volunteer. One is a group called Angel Heart, which takes care of providing food to people who are not able to get it for themselves and in some cases not feed themselves.
He obviously puts a huge emphasis on culture. He has at DaVita. He does in everything he does in a people sense of engagement, of being able to pull the very best out of those people, to lifting them up, to minimize their weaknesses. And he does it by getting on the ground, being with them.
That emphasis on citizenship, more than just being a resident, is part of what makes a great, great partner in the community.
Kent and DaVita have been a role model for our students and students elsewhere in illustrating how companies can really be a formidable force for good of their employees without ignoring their shareholders. I have never met a leader that is as intentional and reflective and committed and passionate to the mission that he and the teammates at DaVita have.
From the very beginning, he said, anything that we can do in DaVita to help the Denver Public Schools, please ask. And we didn't hesitate. How could we adapt to have the best possible leadership program in the Denver Public Schools?
I said, okay, here's the kind of commitments you're going to have to make, or we're not even going to try, because this is hard stuff.
I've heard just from hundreds and hundreds of our school leaders that the leadership development programs that we are offering are the most meaningful professional growth opportunities that they've ever had.
You know, one of the funny things is that when DaVita first came, international expansion wasn't the top thing on their agenda. But really over the last 3 or 4 years, they are expanding all over the world.
Our Bridge of Life program now is up to about 90 medical missions, probably in 27 different countries. So the breadth and the depth are quite striking. And so we've started acting like us, the DaVita Village, everywhere. In fact, what we're talking about are not so much DaVita values or American values, but universal values around respect, around affection, around caring about the long term.
I think what's so powerful about his leadership is that what he's done here is not confined to DaVita, it's not confined to the United States, but he's really striven for what are the universal values that people from all cultures, all parts of the world care about. They're enormously human values.
He's always looking around him to lift up not just the individuals he's interacting with, but that broader community, knowing that that is the real way you change the course of history. That is the real way you change the course of humanity.
Kent, through your passion, your principled leadership, and your dedication to building strong communities, we see what is possible. And more than that, what is essential to living well and living purposefully. On behalf of the Josef Korbel School of International Studies and the University of Denver, thank you for the tremendous impact you and the citizens of the DaVita Village have had in our city and around the world. Please welcome the winner of this year's Bridge Builder Award, DaVita CEO Kent Thiry.
Thank you, thank you. It's always good if you bring some of the home crowd with you. I think the greatest gift I can give to this particular group now is to be as concise as possible. I have to admit it's somewhat awkward to stand here because I literally don't think that this is an honor that I deserve. But I am a very serious student of leadership and community building, and the notion that business people can add tremendous value to the world separate from their philanthropic and charitable and civic activities, but in how they run their companies and how they invest in the quality of the workplace and how they invest in making their local operations a crucial part of the local communities. And so in that spirit, on behalf of the DaVita Village, it's an honor to accept this recognition totally independent of myself. We do have 68,000 teammates across 12 countries. My official title is Mayor of the DaVita Village. And we're intensely proud of the fact that we have the leading clinical outcomes in many areas in the entire country. It was quite a coincidence when we heard that this was a Bridge Builder Award, because at DaVita, the bridge is actually a sacred symbol that we ask all new teammates after they've been with us a certain number of months, they get to pick that number. If we've behaved in a certain way that reflects seriousness about our mission and about our values, that we ask them to stand in front of the bridge, physically or metaphorically. We have bridges all over the village. I walk over the bridge every single morning before I walk into my office to remind myself of our aspirations. If they walk across that bridge, and we never ask them, you never have to declare if you did or not, although many people do, it means that you've declared yourself to be a citizen and teammate of the village, not an employee of a company. And it means you share accountability for making it a differentially healthy place to work. It doesn't mean that you can't reverse course and come back across that village if you decide we're incompetent or insincere or ineffective. But it means that you've made a level of commitment that you share accountability for trying to create that kind of special place. We take mission and values quite seriously, as some of you know. The mission and values were actually chosen by election by thousands of our teammates. I get evaluated according to the 3 components of our mission and our 7 core values every year. My scores are made public. They are given to the board of directors. The comments that go along with them are all reported to the board of directors as well as to the folks who work most closely with me. We also have every local team, and we have 2,800 local teams around the globe. Every one of them scores themselves in terms of how strongly the mission and values live within their local environment, that we believe you cannot assert that your mission and values are important unless you're willing to discuss them live in applied settings, in the context of real decisions you've made about budgets, about investments, about terminations, about hirings, and all the rest. We work hard to make those things real. Nonetheless, you might well ask if there are other things that we tangibly do to promote the notion of the United States, of America, having stronger relationships in other countries and setting an example. One thing I intensely agree with the Vice President about is that American values, the values that people see our country as standing for, our governmental decision-making historically is standing for, are still a beacon of light and a beacon of hope and a strong beacon of differentiation compared to many other places around the world. With all of our problems, we are still an incredibly attractive place in the minds of literally tens of millions of folks elsewhere. And let me just list a couple quick things before I get out of your way. We, number one, have the DaVita way of giving, where we have thousands of local teams nominate and vote on which local charities that DaVita will give money to locally across the globe. This is something in many other countries, a level of corporate philanthropy that literally doesn't exist in those countries. Second, you heard in the video, we've now done over 100 medical missions in different parts of the world with our caregivers bringing care to other people who typically, without it, would die or have a dramatically impaired life. Number three, we show equal regard and respect for women in places where that's not common, like Saudi Arabia and Malaysia. One does not change the world overnight in these respects, but you make big differences when you insist on behaving differently. In the moment when I sit at tables, and as I did recently in Malaysia, and we insist on the female nurses being at the same table as the male doctors, and that we talk to them as exact equals, it's horrifying for about half the people at the table and exhilarating for the other half. And that half and half is mixed. Yeah, thank you. Number five, we bring our concept of village service days. Company service days aren't that unusual in America. They are quite unusual elsewhere in the world, and we take that principle elsewhere. Another example is academies. We invite every single one of our teammates, independent of rank, to 2 full days of discussion. There's no applied training. It's all about our mission, our values, our language. We ask people on the second day to write their personal credo, which is essentially a statement of life purpose, and then to assess whether or not working at DaVita is actually consistent with what they feel their life purpose is. We've had alcoholics stop drinking. We've had people who are estranged from their families get back together. A lot of the people that come to these things have never been on a business trip. We have about 18,000 of our teammates who make about $16, $17 an hour. It's an entry-level job to a real technical career. Many of them have never checked into a hotel. It also became clear early on that many of them had never been exposed to an open bar. And so we had to change that part. But the physician making $600,000 a year is sitting next to the technician making $30,000 a year, is sitting next to the nurse, is sitting next to the VP of marketing. There's no titles there. We're all equal before the mission and values, and it's a time for everybody to engage with seriousness. It's analogous to if someone comes to America from Egypt or Nigeria or whatever, and after X number of years they decide they want to be a citizen of America. If you talk to people like that, that's a big decision. It's a meaningful decision. We try to make declaring citizenship in DaVita that same sort of significance, and the academies are a crucial way of doing that. We also do silent retreats at a Buddhist monastery. We do 4-night outdoor, kind of outward bound type programs where there's facilitated conversations around life, leadership, and values. All this is about just making the distinction between management, which is so important. It's a business skill, and you want to study business in order to get better at it. Very important. Leadership is a human skill. If you want to become a better leader, you need to learn more about humans, starting with yourself. And so we invest in that, as well as having scholarships for kids and grandkids of our teammates and other items. And while the trappings of many of these kind of practices are distinctly American in appearance, our experience is that they speak to universal values when we do these things in rural areas of Saudi Arabia, of poor areas in India, when we do things in Germany, when we do things in rural Poland, that these values are in fact universal, but our way of expressing them often liberates people to act on them, think about them, reflect on them in ways that they haven't previously. We do think that intentionality speaks, and the basic goodwill embedded in our philosophy and practices makes us an American ambassador. And that's a very big deal, not only for us and not only for America, but we think for the world. We do think that America does best when it does what it believes most. And what I think a lot of us believe about America is that when we're at our best, we're focused on fairness, we're focused on equality of opportunity, we're focused on an explicit and vibrant sense of both rights and responsibilities, and we cherish good old-fashioned community values. We believe that American business can add tremendous value around the world by demonstrating these community values, and in so doing, dramatically enhance America's standing in the world. And we believe in the importance of that. Game on. Thank you very much.
It is also our privilege to present the Josef Korbel School's Humanitarian Award for long-standing philanthropic commitment to global issues of education, health and wellness, poverty, and the arts.
It was one of those, I have to tell you, life-changing moments. You walked into the room, and John and Carrie were there in their lovely, gracious, gentle presence, and then all of a sudden you realized you were dealing with two very amazing, extraordinary individuals. I understood at that moment that I had just met two people that not only would probably change my life personally, but would absolutely change the life of the community in Colorado.
They have taught us a great deal, really, about how to live and how to take chances and how to have the right set of values, and those values are expressed in what they do, not just in what they say.
Every single day, I learn from Carrie and John different ways to handle getting through the day, different ways to challenge myself. There is nobody out there who is more willing to take on a challenge and conquer it than Carrie and John Morgridge.
When you give, it's like falling in love for the first time. There's that feeling.
I think what inspires us and hopefully inspires others is our enthusiasm and our love for what we're doing.
When you look at how a humanitarian award is given out, I think one of the big goals is to recognize people that look at all mankind. And the Morgridges have consistently found ways to make sure that they are lifting up those who, in many cases, have nowhere else to turn.
Carrie and John manage the Morgridge Family Foundation like I've never seen an organization run before. They are so passionate about the work that we're doing at the foundation, and they're passionate because they have this heightened sense of responsibility to do right with these resources that they've been entrusted with.
So I know it sounds overwhelming that we do 185 projects a year. And every time I look at the spreadsheet, I kind of pinch myself like, come on, because we really did try to make it go down to 100. Every time I go to a conference and I meet somebody new and they are doing something so phenomenal, I have this great opportunity.
They really want to go deep into grassroots work. You know, lots of people give grants to an organization. What I've always been struck with is how intense they look at where does that money ultimately go. At the end of the day, they want to both see the impact, but they also want to make sure that there's some sustainability to their giving.
They are philanthropists that engage with you. They are philanthropists that care about the outcomes. They are also philanthropists that are very wise and make you think about the sustainability beyond their gift.
I think what we do so often is we're not always looking for how we could help our neighbor, how can we help a friend, how can we help a local student, and then how do we find that student, how do we connect?
When they make an investment into any initiative, they are measuring, and they have the highest standard.
And that's what I love about them. They challenge and they inspire at the same time, and they bring out the best of every single one of us.
They do really speak for Colorado in ways that are perfect, really, that we all subscribe to and that not the whole world does. And I think that may be one of the reasons they have been so appreciated here and so beloved, really.
Carrie and John, I could never keep up with you on bicycles, running, any athletic activity, and now I know clearly I can't keep up with you in community involvement. So to you as well, on behalf of the entire state of Colorado, thank you more than words can say.
Carrie and John, you're great friends of the University of Denver and models for engaged leadership in our city and state. You've shown us how making significant and lasting change in the world begins with the smallest of heartfelt and hopeful acts, and the principle that every gift matters. I know I speak for the entire DU community in saying thank you for your commitment to creating positive change in the world and for being such an inspiration to us all. Please welcome the winners of this year's Humanitarian Award, John and Carrie Morgridge.
Wow, a little bit of weight standing up here after the speakers we've had this evening. I'm very humbled and grateful for this amazing honor. I really have to give credit to the people who have helped me get here. My parents, my friends, our partners in philanthropy. I feel extremely lucky to be on this stage. It was fascinating listening to the Vice President. And I am definitely my wife's biggest fan. And again, thank you all. Thank you to the university for this honor.
So Rebecca, you forgot to introduce us as John Carey. Thank you. I'm so glad you get it, because we need a little something with dessert, right?
We have had the amazing opportunity to walk through some special doors. John Morgridge, my father-in-law, who happens to be sitting right here, took a company called Cisco Public. And when I met my husband, John, it was shortly thereafter, and our lives were forever changed. And they were ever changed because we had the opportunity that not many have. But then I realized all of us have the same opportunity. We have the opportunity to be kind to one another. We have the opportunity to do good in the world. All of us have it in us to be humanitarians. It's about surrounding yourself with people who make that opportunity even bigger and grander. And at the foundation, we try to do things slightly different. So I just thought I would share a little bit with you, being the last speaker, and I know you want to get home, and the dessert was delicious, by the way. John and I have just finished a journey that I think has changed our lives. We have biked across the country on a mountain bike, unsupported. That means that each of us had a bicycle that weighed about 95 pounds, My front pannier had my clothes, and I had the stove on this side, which I insisted. On the back side, I had, ladies, one outfit for 46 days. And what happened for us is that we got to see the country in a different way, and we got to see goodness. I know that there was a lot of hard tonight on this stage, and the goodness that we saw in the country is also the goodness that we see in DU. It's the goodness we see in our friends in the audience, and it's the goodness we see in the charities that we support. In our unique way of doing things, like biking across the country, it wasn't easy, and philanthropy is not easy. It's actually hard some days, because some days you have the weight of the world. When I was watching Angelina Jolie's Humanitarian Award, she talked about how it wasn't fair that here she stood with a house over her head, not worrying about groceries or not worrying about where she would sleep safely, whereas a woman across the country was living in a refugee camp. And that weight can be heavy on when you're really serious about philanthropy. And so we try to lighten it up a little bit. And when we saw the goodness in America, it really gave me hope for what's about to come. And so what I want to ask all of you, because it's late, it's the end of the night, some of you probably went to spin class this morning at 5 a.m., is that our journey took us 46 days to realize that we wanted to do things differently. And so I encourage each of you for the next 46 days to do one random act of kindness. It's something that all of us can do. It's how every gift matters. And if each of us did one random act of kindness, and you should share it with the people that went home, they should also do 46 days of random act of kindness. You might feel that you're also changed and you're empowered. And I hope that you see the goodness in the world that John and I get to see each and every day. John was my love and support. So let me share with you what it feels like to bike across the country. It hurts like hell. I was sore as crazy. And it was like, John and I have both done Ironman, the full one, and it was like doing that every day for 46 days in a row. But we supported each other. Our love for each other became stronger. And every day we would support each other instead of knocking each other down, that we could finish this thing. We could do this thing. If you had looked at the map when we went from Banff, Canada to Mexico, it was daunting, it was overwhelming. That's, if you will, the problems of the world. But every day we just had a small goal of hitting 50 to 60 to 80 miles, just little baby goals. Some days we only got to 30 miles, but that was okay because we still went forward. And that's what philanthropy is about, and that's what doing good is all about. It's just about moving forward, and each of us have us in to move forward. So on the last day, we had 45 miles to go, and we knew we were going to finish. And about 5 miles in, I started to cry. And a friend, his friend, had bet that I would cry on this trip. So I'll be damned if I was not going to cry. And then I thought, you know what? Screw him. I'm going to cry because I had this overwhelming feeling of this love for this man who had helped me get through this journey, who had helped me get through this hardship. I pulled over. I wanted to give him a hug and a kiss and thank him for having me go on this journey. You know, on the bad days, I was cursing his name for making me go on this journey. But on our last day, I was thanking him. And when I turned and stopped, he too was crying. We were in sync together. And that's what great philanthropy is like. Great philanthropy is when Jeff Barrett or Becky Takeda Tinker or Rebecca Chop has a dream, has a vision, has a plan, and you're so in sync and you're so aligned that you almost cry together. That's what it feels like. And I just hope that all of you have an opportunity in your lives to change somebody else's life, to be in sync for one time, one moment in your life where you're in sync, where you're just so in love with whatever you're doing or whomever you're with, that you cry together because they're tears of joy. And I just want to thank Chris Hill for nominating us for this. It's just been an amazing experience. For Rebecca Chop for her leadership, for the team at DU, Provost Kivstad, I know David Greenberg was here, Tom Willoughby. There's so many wonderful people at DU. And I just want to end with, the DU ski team is NCAA champions, and damn it, let's do it again this year.
Well, thank you very much. This has been, I think, a really spectacular evening, but none more so than these three remarkable human beings that we've just honored and who have honored us. So let's give one more round of applause for Carrie, John, and Kent. I mean, remarkable. Finally, let me just thank all the people who have worked so hard on this dinner. I mean, they are too numerous to mention. I do want to thank Rebecca Chop for, being up here the whole time and hanging in there through the whole thing. I also want to thank Sodexo, Ira, Patty. I mean, you guys have really rocked tonight. So thank you. And let me just thank all of you who have supported the Korbel School, are supporting this Korbel School, and will support the Korbel School. We're very proud of what we're doing here in this family in the University of Denver, but we've hardly just begun. So thank you very much.